Story 1. I've always wanted my own dog. I put a lot of research into it and decided to get a Burns Mountain Dog. One thing to know about this breed and my dog in specific is that they are very friendly and don't know a stranger before getting him. I saw videos of the same breed just napping while repair people came into the backyard. This was not an issue for me. We have a very protective Saint Bernard at home, and I didn't think we needed a second guard dog, and I wanted to be able to take my dog out. It was better for him to be friendly around October when a chill was just starting to form in the air. A friend and I decided to get some pumpkin-flavored coffee for us and a pup cup for my dog Cerus and go to a local park to get him some exercise now that it wasn't too hot for him outside, and smoke some. This is not one of the nicer parks. It used to have a dog park attached, but due to continuous flood damage it was closed down, and now the area where it used to be is mostly secluded, and there's plenty of people who use that for their advantage and do drugs there. Kind of like what we had planned. There's also a lot of families on the weekends, but this was in the middle of the week during school and work hours, so the park was pretty empty when we got there. As we walked, we passed a man who was training for something that I'm not sure I'd like to know about. He was carrying a full army pack and was drenched in sweat, and when I later told my stepdad about this, he said he'd seen the same guy running along the main road where there are no sidewalks. Serious completely ignored him. We also met a couple who had a Rottweiler puppy a few months younger than my dog, and we stopped to let them play for a moment and talk to the couple. Sirius had absolutely no issue with the pair and was very happy to receive pets from them. Eventually we got to the location we were planning to smoke at, directly underneath the train tracks, which is the most secluded location in the park, as there's only one path to get to it, unlike the rest of the park that loops around. This area used to be a road, but it was purchased by the city for the park, so it's empty besides a house or two just past the barriers. We're there for around 30 minutes before an older man walks by, gives us a "how's it going" the way people do when you pass them on a walk, and turns around and walks back the other way. A little while later he passes back again and notices us still sitting there, stops and says, "Are you girls all right? Are you waiting on a ride?" This creeped me out slightly, but I tend to be overly cautious, so I say no, we're okay, which was true. I had driven there and I was still nowhere sober enough to drive, and we were just enjoying the nice weather before it got too cold. He responds by telling us to have a nice day and turning around. Sirius, through these interactions, just continued to play with the stick he was chewing on. I mentioned these encounters just to solidify how absolutely strange the next one was. Soon after, a man who seemed to be in his late 40s or early 50s starts to walk towards us. Instead of turning around like the other man had done, he starts to walk toward us. Sirius absolutely loses it, barking and growling at this man and attempting to lunge at him, despite the fact that he was only around 7 months at this time. Sirius is a big dog, probably around 70 pounds at this point, and the man was very freaked out and continues past us, walking faster and keeping his distance. However, like I said earlier, there's nothing behind us besides an empty road and thick heavy woods. My friend and I continue to sit there until I was sure enough that he was gone. That was weird, right? I asked my friend around 30 minutes after she agreed with me. Where did he even go anyway? That was something I hadn't considered at the time, but looking around I couldn't think of anywhere he could have been. Because we're high and stupid, we come up with a brilliant idea to wait and see if he passes us again, and if he doesn't, we'd walk towards the road behind us to see if there were houses he could have gone to. However, him living in one seemed unlikely. He was dressed for hiking with one of those backpacks specifically made for it, and if he lived so close, I don't think he'd be dressed up for a hike. He doesn't pass us again, so we walk up the small hill and past the barricade. There's around 3 houses just past it, all pretty run down, and the second we get to the first one, a man comes out onto his porch with a gun and just stares at us. So safe to say the people who live there aren't a fan of people from the park on their property. I think the only solution is that he went into the woods. I'd never seen my dog act like that before, and I haven't seen him act like that since. Every other time he meets someone, he acts like everyone he meets he's known for his whole life. I've always thought that dogs have better instincts than us, and this has just proved it right for me. We're both pretty small girls, around 100 pounds and under 5 feet 5 inches, and it's scary to think what could have happened had my dog not been with us and we had no way to defend ourselves in such a secluded area. Yeah, I grew up in the 1990s, born in the late 80s. I remember getting my first Story 2 bike and starting to explore the area I grew up in upstate New York, where I grew up is much different now. In the 90s, it was more rural with clusters of neighborhoods here and there. I lived near an old capped landfill, and the main road connected a lot of semis down to some factories in a neighboring town that was about a 5-minute bike ride. We also had an old Baptist church that was founded by an eccentric former hippie who was really good to the community. My dad, who was a very serious drinker, loved to fish hunt and all that other stuff with his friends because it gave him an excuse to drink and kill something, but he ended up making this deal with this pastor and the gentleman who owned a pond behind the church to stock it with fish, as at the time my dad and his friends started becoming serious competitive fishers and went in on a boat which my dad had to sell his share to eventually keep drinking. So my friends and I had permission to fish there in the summer, and we would swim and all of that. I lived easily less than 5 minutes from this pond, and my friends and I go out there one summer day. This was around 1995. My mom had heard on the news a week prior about a wave of kidnappings. I don't remember if Amber Alert were a thing then, so she decided to make a code word with me. She came to me and told me if anyone ever tried to convince me that they knew my mom or dad, in the hopes to get me to get in their car to ask them for a code word. ORS was pickles. So fast forward to our fishing trip. My friends leave before me after we sat around and actually just swam more than anything. My friend Dennis got mad because he was serious about fishing, so he and his brother left and I was alone on the road. As the road, once you got past this farm, was a straight shot to the main part of town, and our road was right before the road ended. So I get to my road and I'm about to turn, and I didn't notice I was being followed by this pickup truck with this Cletus-looking guy from The Simpsons in. He greets me and tells me that my mom and dad are waiting for us at this local restaurant, which I knew. He tells me that they asked him to come and get me and meet them there so we can all have dinner. I immediately thought of what my mom said, and I started getting this evil feeling like I was in danger. So I told him that my parents specifically have a password that they give to their friends, and that if he was one of their friends, he was required to tell me, at which point he got mad and started swearing at me. I didn't see one, but I was certain he had a firearm as he started fumbling around in his truck. I turned and started paddling down my road screaming for help and that I was in danger. He jerked his truck to follow, but I was making too much noise and was already to my house, and he just took off. When I got home, my mom was there and I was hysterical and asked her why she would ask such a mean friend to pick me up, and I told her what happened. She didn't believe me and calmed me down. She told me I did the right thing, but I could tell she had a hard time believing me. She also grew up in the same town, and nothing like that had ever happened to her. A few days later, a friend of hers tells her a similar story about her son in another part of our town. The police then were involved, and the cops came and talked to me. I gave them the same description of the man, the truck, and what had happened, and everything else. I don't know if the guy was ever caught. I used to be very bitter at my mom for not believing me, but I now understand the confusion she had, and instead of reacting, she just tried to console me and keep an eye on everything. My dad, on the other hand, was more vigilant about it and would ask me all the time when he'd take me out if the owner of a truck that I described looked like the man I saw. I just hope that no other kids were harmed by Story 3. Him. This happened when I was in the 2nd grade. I felt sick in the morning, but I wanted to go to school that day. I managed the first period okay, but then I was sent home because I was running a high fever. Luckily, we lived on the same street as the school, so instead of getting my parents out of work to come and pick me up, I just walked home. It was fine to walk home alone for me. I didn't ever worry. It was only a short walk. I let myself in and went straight to my bedroom. I got into bed and fell asleep. Before I knew it, I was sleeping soundly, I guess, but then I was awoken by a noise from downstairs. I honestly just thought it was my mom coming back from her part-time job or from shopping or whatever the school probably called her. Since she woke me up, I figured that I might as well go downstairs to go and see her. I crept down the stairs quietly, and I felt like surprising her that day. I likely had a smile on my face as I slowly went downstairs. However, that smile would soon disappear when I realized that my mom wasn't down there. Someone else was. It was our neighbor, a guy of about 50 years old. He lived next door. I stopped and stared at him. He had a knife in his hand. Seeing me at home, he panicked. Now, I am old enough to know that he didn't expect company. He would have assumed that the house would have been empty, or I dread to think my mom would have been home alone. Before I could begin to process what I was seeing and begin to question what was happening, he spoke to me. "Hey, can you keep a secret? No one needs to know that I was here, okay, pal?" My eyes were glued to the knife in his hand. The whole time he was speaking, my brain was now in gear. Remember, I had just woken up, and I had a fever. Now I was beginning to put two and two together, well, trying as best as I could. I was only a kid when this happened. I stared at that knife and I just thought to myself, I am in danger. I was so scared when the gravity of the situation set in that all I could do was nod. Yes, he smiled at me when I nodded, and then to my surprise he turned and left. I ran over to the door and locked it. I guess I must have forgotten to lock it when I got home from school. I wanted to tell my parents, but the thought that my neighbor might kill me if I told them he scared me so much with that life he had in his hand that there was no way I could break the promise I had with him. I had to keep the promise. So I didn't say anything to my parents. About a month went by and life was kind of back to normal. I thought about the neighbor often, and I didn't like being home alone after school waiting for my parents to come home, but I was surviving. One afternoon after school I heard a knock at the door. I went to the door, and it was the old man next door stood out there. He had a load of sweets and he wanted to give them to me. I was so stupid to open the door while I was home alone after what had happened. I know that now. By the way, I reluctantly accepted them and closed the door. He would run into me or come to the house once a month to give me some candy. After that, he always smiled and said, "Here you go, eat these." I didn't understand at the time why he was bringing me those sweets, but I guess it could have been to try to bribe my silence. I'm not sure, but I think that's what it was. I didn't like being rewarded for a reason I didn't understand. It felt wrong and a bit gross. I didn't like to see him smiling at me holding the candy. I could always picture him holding that knife instead. One time he came over with his candy while my mom was home, and my mom made excuses for me, saying, "Oh, he's just shy," and stuff like that. When I didn't want to talk to him or make eye contact, my mom would laugh as she said that, finding my shyness cute. I guess she didn't know the secret I was keeping for him. Months and months went by, and then I heard the news that the creepy old neighbor of ours had passed away. It was like a weight had been lifted off of me. My parents thought that I would have been in bits because to them it looked like the old man and I had a deep connection inside. I was celebrating, not mourning. I didn't shed a tear for that man. Life moved on after that. I grew up, moved away, and began a life of my own. I've always been a little edgy about being the only one at home, but over the years it's gotten easier. I went back to my hometown last weekend and was reminded of our neighbor. I was at some neighborhood party with my parents. Someone mentioned him and I listened in. That old guy, he loved betting on horses and playing the slots. Another person said, "Yeah, I just remember him being an alcoholic. He used to turn up to our house uninvited all the time, and I had to have strong words with him once to get him to go away." And another neighbor chimed in, "Where don't you think it's funny that all the thefts in the neighborhood went away after he passed on?" That's when it dawned on me he was there that day to rob us, and possibly more than that had my mother been home alone, which was very likely because she worked part-time. Things might have gone very differently. So he was bribing me with sweets to keep his secret. He was going to rob us at the bare minimum. He was an alcoholic thief who preyed on our neighborhood. I can still see his face and the knife in his hand. It is a pretty traumatic memory for me. I have had some pretty creepy experiences in my life. A lot of them live with me and re-emerge when the story for lights are out. By that I mean I'm essentially haunted by their memory. One in particular stands out for me. I remember being home alone and hearing a woman's voice. I couldn't really make out what she was saying. She was mumbling and sobbing. That was really scary. I just ran straight out of the house. On another occasion, I was home alone and the door to the living room slowly creaked open by itself. I instantly got to my feet and went to see who was there, but of course no one was there. I don't know if I am susceptible to the paranormal or anything, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't a believer. But talking about the paranormal isn't why I'm here today. I want to share with you the scariest experience I have ever had, and it happened when I moved into an apartment to live alone for the first time in my life. This happened 3 years ago. I had just moved in. Picture a room with just the bare bones furniture and lots of cardboard boxes. I remember being way too tired to unpack any of those boxes. Is so I thought I would unpack the following morning after I'd positioned my armchair at a perfect angle for the TV. I collapsed into it and relaxed. I must have been dozing while I was sat in it for a while, but then I was awoken by a strange noise. I heard laughter coming from the opposite side of the living room wall. Well, as far as I'm aware, I only heard it the once, so I kind of chalked it up to me being half asleep. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I got up and then went to bed. In the morning, as I was making myself some breakfast, I heard another noise coming from the wall opposite my new living room. It was that laughter again. A weird thought came to mind. I wonder if the person next door is laughing at me. I need to give you a little more context here. I think now when you think of a laugh, you think of those sitcom laughs. I guess you know, a live audience. What I mean is a laugh when something is funny. The laugh I heard was not someone laughing at a TV show to me. It was someone laughing in a deliberate, strange manner. I don't know, like the Joker or something. It creeped me out a bit. I hadn't introduced myself to my neighbors yet, and as it is a custom here in Japan, when someone moves in, I figured now was a good time to do so. I mean, at least I knew the guy next door was home. I was sure it was a guy based on his laugh, so I went outside and pushed the doorbell for the next door. I waited a couple of moments, but no one came to the door. Just as I was about to give up and go back inside, one of the other neighbors came out of their apartment. He looked like he was heading off to work. No one has lived there for a long time, he said to me. Well, as you can imagine, that was pretty strange to hear, since I just heard someone laugh next door. I introduced myself and kept the laughter I heard to myself. I ended up thinking that it was just another encounter with the paranormal. Great, trust me, to live next door to a haunted apartment, I thought. Normally, I would have freaked and wanted to move out straight away, but since I had previous history with ghosts, I thought I would stick it out. Nothing much else happened besides hearing a little bit of strange laughter now and then over the course of the following days. Who cares about a little laughter? Anyways, I told myself. 3 months went by pretty quickly in the new place, and despite hearing a man laughing every now and then next door, it was pretty much plain sailing. But just after that 3-month period, I heard a new noise coming from next door. There was a new, strange clanking sound coming from the walls. Once again, it was the living room wall. Well, the laughter was one thing, but now a strange clanking, banging sound. That's a little too much. I thought about moving, but if I'm completely honest, I was way too lazy to pack everything up and get searching for a new place. I didn't act. I just stalled and then learned to live with that new noise. Life got in the way. I was out more than I was in. Anyways, one day, I think it was a Saturday or Sunday, I know it was the weekend, I got so annoyed by those weird noises from next door, I decided to boot the wall. At the point I heard them coming from, in my head, it seemed dumb. And I remember clearly thinking to myself, there's no point in kicking the wall because the ghost next door won't care. I kicked it nonetheless, and I wasn't ready for the reaction I got. I heard a very distinct and clear male voice shout, "Wah," and then I heard the sound of something crashing. What the hell is going on? I thought. I froze. I didn't expect to provoke a reaction from the spirit next door. Then reality hit me like a truck. AAM's razor. There wasn't a ghost next door. Maybe there was a person in there who'd been living in there without the landlord knowing. Maybe some guy had broken in there and claimed the place as his own. Well, I wasn't going to go and ring the doorbell again, but I knew someone who might. The police. I called the cops, and they arrived quite quickly. I heard them try the door and enter, but there was a bit of a commotion next door, a heated exchange. There were screams and shouts. There was someone living next door. After all, I found out later that a middle-aged man had been living in there, even though that apartment was supposed to be empty. The man was apparently under the influence of some illicit substances, shall we say, and when the police busted in there, he went on a deranged rampage. He went kicking and screaming. It turned out that he was the landlord's son. His son had troubles with substances, so therefore his dad, the landlord, allowed him to use that apartment to get up to whatever he got up to in there. I was really annoyed that he was allowed to come and go as he pleased in there while I had to pay and listen to him laugh like a. That laugh really creeped me out, but it wasn't a patch on what I realized. That clanking sound was the sound of him digging a kitchen knife into the drywall that separated our apartments. I was told that there were tons of holes in his side of the wall. It seemed like that maniac was trying to break down the wall and bust into my living room. I moved after that. I got my deposit back and was forgiven a couple of weeks of rent payment. That goes without saying in my opinion. Although I have had my run-ins with the paranormal, the fear I get when I remember the sound of that madman slashing away at his wall is unmatched. I dread to think what his plan was. Ghosts aren't half as scary as people if you ask me. This happened around 15 years ago and nothing became of it, but it was. Story 5. So weird that I think about it regularly. I was 16 years old at the time. It was early evening, so getting dark but not yet pitch black, and I was walking home from the bus stop after seeing some friends. I just turned from the main road onto my quiet street when I heard my name being called by a male voice. I was still trying to figure out where the noise was coming from when I see a guy jump out of a car and jogging towards me. Smiling again, he says my name and asks me how I've been as he's getting closer. I'm waiting for the penny to drop, but even when he's close up, I realized I don't know this man, and it's clear from my face that I'm confused. Seeing my confusion, he says, "Don't you remember me? It's me, Chris," and I say, "No, sorry, I don't remember meeting you before. How do you know my name?" He says something incredibly vague, that he's my ex's friend, and I say, "Okay, but what's my ex's name then?" And he starts laughing. I am absolutely convinced we'd never crossed paths before in our lives. And he looked like he was in his 20s, so how would he know my ex who was my age? He still had this unnerving, creepy smile on his face. I think he was either high or drunk, but I started to feel nerved and wanted to end the conversation ASAP. He asks me to come hang out with him, and I say, "No, sorry, I need to get home." He's being insistent, but I'm being firm and saying I need to get home. I'll get in trouble if I'm late. My parents are expecting me, and other various excuses. I just tried to win the conversation politely by saying, "Nice to see you, but I have to go," and then I start to walk away. He seems to accept it and thankfully goes back to his car. I feel relieved to see him drive away. Until I turn the corner, that is, he's parked literally over my house's drive and is standing outside of his car again with that weird intense smile. Now I'm fully freaking out. He's blocking my entrance to my house. I can't figure out if it's a fluke or if he knows where I live, but I don't want to walk into my home while he's there. I stop in my tracks, and he again walks towards me and starts with the "Come hang out, we'll go for a drive," and other similar stuff. I'm freaked out and also annoyed at the fact he's not leaving it alone, so I say, "Dude, I don't know you. I'm not going to go for a drive with some random guy." He then laughs and points to his car and says, "But I'm with my friend," and for the first time I look into the car and I see a girl looking at me. She looks high out of her mind and is just staring directly at me. Honestly, my heart dropped looking at her face. She looked miserable and so spaced out. I can't remember how I got rid of him, but I just stood my ground and kept saying, "No, I don't want to go for a drive. I'm going home." I stood in that same spot until he eventually gave up, got back in the car and drove away, all while this girl still stared at me. Like I said, nothing ever came from it. I never saw that guy again. I have no idea how he knew my name. The girl in the car looked older than me, in her early 20s, most likely, so at the time I assumed she knew what she was doing, but every so often I think of her and I wonder if she needed help, or maybe it was all innocent. The first hope she's okay. Though I'll start by saying that nothing could have prepared me for what I was going to discover the morning after. Story 6. Night out. It started as every other night would. Me and my family got ready to head to our local bar for a fundraising event. I just turned 18 and was looking to have a chill night with friends and family. I knew most of the people there, so I was feeling really relaxed. While at the bar, I went to pay for my drink when the bartender told me it had already been paid for. When I went to see who had paid for it, I saw my cousin's partner. He's around 12 years older than me. Give or take, I give him a quick wave and we did the normal niceties like, "Hi, how are you doing?" It's important to note that I'd barely spoken more than 2 words to him before, as he was usually quiet or retreated to his room when we would go and visit my cousin. After saying thank you, I thought nothing of it. Nothing seemed off. With a little interaction, by the end of the night I had gathered my family together and told them I wanted to head home. At this point in time, I was still living at home with my mother. She had made plans to stay at my grandmother's that night, so I was going to go home and sleep. It was around 11:30 p.m. and I was outside having a smoke, about to head to my car. Just as I was about to head to my car, I hear someone call my name, so I turned to find my cousin's partner walking towards me. He asked if I was heading home for the night, which I thought was weird. I said it was late, so I was calling it a night without skipping a beat. He mentioned the car I drive and said he would see me around sometime. At this point, I got a bit creeped out, so I said good night and Walked off to my car. There were plenty of people outside, so I wasn't concerned at all. Once I got in the car, my phone went off, and it was my mother. She was begging and pleading with me to go and stay at my grandmother's house for the night, saying that she had a really bad feeling. Initially, I was really annoyed. I just wanted to go home and go to sleep in my own bed, but she insisted. I couldn't understand why. I was used to being alone at home at night, but she wouldn't let it go. I hung up and started driving home. I couldn't be bothered going to my grandma's when my house was just down the road. I was tired. I just wanted to go home. Not even halfway home, my phone went off, so I pulled over to check it. It was my sister asking me to please go stay at my grandma's house. I was pissed off at this point and decided it would be easier going to my grandma's house instead of arguing with my family. When I got to my grandma's house, everyone was asleep. Now I was really pissed off and went straight to sleep. The night was uneventful, but I woke up in the morning to my family talking about how they all had a feeling of dread, which is why they didn't want me to go home alone that night. My mother and I left for home at lunch. I felt off as soon as we pulled into the driveway. Once I got to the door, I found a police card wedged into the door to call them ASAP. I went inside and found my mother's camera on the kitchen table. This was a huge red flag, as it was in my bedroom. Before we left for the fundraiser, I went to my room to find my entire room had been ransacked. No other room in our house had been touched. My blankets had been pulled back, and it looked like someone had been in my bed. My underwear drawer was wide open, and some were also sprawled on the floor. Another camera of my mother's was also on the table where my TV was, which was directly opposite my bed. My clothes were everywhere. By this point, I was losing my If I'd gone home like the plan all along, I would have made my way through the house and then crawled into bed without switching my lamp on. I had done this so many times previously, and I wouldn't have seen the state of my room at all. My mother gave them a call to find out what happened, and what she told me made the blood drained from my face. The police were alerted to a break-in at our next-door neighbor's house when our neighbors found a man wandering inside their house. The man claimed he was my friend and went into the wrong house, and they chased him out. Our house had a big 8x12 deck which looked over my neighbor's house. They called the police again when they spotted the man having a smoke on our deck. The police arrived at our house at 2 a.m., but since I wasn't home, no one answered the door. They noticed the lights were on, so they went inside to investigate. They made their way through the house and found a man hiding in my bedroom in the dark. He couldn't give an answer why he was there or why he was hiding in my room. They had arrested him and taken him to the station and wanted to know if we knew him, and it turns out it was my cousin's partner, and he'd been hiding in my room for over an hour waiting for me to get home because he knew I would be going home that night. My mother's gut feeling saved me from going home alone that night, and my neighbor's vigilance helped to catch a creep. I always listen now without question whenever she has a bad feeling. Who knows what would have happened? All I know is it wouldn't have been pretty. He was charged with breaking and entering and spent some time in jail before being released and moving country. Always trust your mother's gut feeling, people. It sure saved me from having to deal with that. It has been a while since I last posted a story about a suicide house, but Story 7. I've had several requests for more stories about my experiences in the field of trauma scene work. If you don't know what that is, I used to lead a crew that would go in after a murder-suicide, unattended death, accidental death, fire death, or any manner of incident that caused damage to a structure that left behind a scene that the victim's family shouldn't have to see. Now, I know my stories are not scary in the haunted or serial killer type stories, but the fact is most people couldn't handle walking into a scene like many of the ones I've been on. We've actually had to be careful how we train crew members who work on such scenes. It was often a volunteer basis for working on those types of scenes, meaning we didn't force anyone to go to a house where the dad killed all the children before blowing his brains out when a lazy boy. We just didn't start someone in training and then go, oh, and by the way, we're going to a multiple homicide. Anyway, if there was a way to describe some of the sights and smells of doing this type of work, I'm sure you would see how truly scary or messed up this all is. First of all, I have to say that suicide is not glamour, nor is it ever over for those around you. If you need help, please get help. Don't let your loved ones find you that way. It not only changes them, but changes the feeling inside the house. Anyway, back to my story. This took place in the late 1990s. Just before I got out of the field, we got a call to Dispatch a crew out to a house, and we were told that there was an incident with at least one death. Sometimes it's given to us that way, but never like a real whole story, but sometimes we saw the true story on the evening news, or even a neighbor that talks too much. We arrive at this house. It's a modest house, but not really a high-end home. It's not quite a low-end one either. It was a two-story home about midway into a cul-de-sac street, as with some scenes. There's a cluster of neighbors outside looking at who we were and why we were there. The sheriff's department had just released the scene, so all of the crime scene investigators had already done their job. As I approached the house, I noticed a ton of what looked like bullet holes in the stucco, broken glass, and a long blood stain on the driveway. We went inside and had to suit up almost immediately, as the police had probably used tear gas. There were bloodstains all over. It looked like as if someone had been dragged through the house with blood gushing. There were areas that had pulled up blood. There were areas where it kind of looked like explosions had happened, to which I assumed flashbangs were used, or maybe the guy inside had shot up. What probably strikes you the most in situations like this is how benign the underneath looks. I don't know how to describe it, but just imagine if you will a place looking like the inside of a home molded out of a TV set, a full house. Now imagine the same TV set with blood smeared and pulled bullet holes and tons of broken glass. I mean, they seem like a very normal family. I remember in their living room a big blue woodcut sign that said family, you know. Before live, laugh, love signs were in style, and under that sign were a bunch of family photos of kids' parents, Christmas, graduations, and vacations. Other things in the house was a wall dedicated to the dad's love of his sports teams and pictures of him with his buddies at games and stuff. So what happened, from what we piece together from the news reports, neighbors who wanted to talk to us while we were cleaning his blood off the driveway, and from the scene itself, was that the dad went crazy. He'd been talking about demons, not like I got my own demons, but actual demons. He was sure that he was being attacked by the devil, and that demons were trying to take the souls of his family, so rather than to let the demons take his family, he killed them so they would go to heaven. He ended up barricading himself in the house. It looked like some family members tried to get away after being shot and stabbed, but one collapsed in the kitchen and one escaped somehow and was pulled out by police. The guy ended up shooting back at the police, and the neighborhood was evacuated for blocks. I can't say that all happened for sure due to the fact that we arrived on the scene much later, but that was what the people outside were saying. In the end, he escaped the house and ended up on the roof still shooting at the police. They shot him down and he fell from the roof, and that was his blood we were cleaning from the driveway. He murdered his wife. One of his older children later died in the hospital. One of the kids was killed inside the house. One escaped, and I think another family member that lived with them was unharmed, as they were not at the house when this all went down. It took us a lot longer to clean this scene, as there was so many holes, and we had to remove almost all of the carpet and soft surfaces due to the tear gas. It was a terrible scene inside. I know this might sound religious or whatever, but come across enough of these scenes and you start to really believe evil does exist. In 2010, my hometown was shaken by Story 8. Disappearances. First, there were small children missing. A new report every week. In the same month, a woman disappeared too, and people started speculating that it could be organ trafficking related. Everybody talked about a black Jeep SUV spotted in the days of the disappearances. My mom was working late in the center of the city, so I went to see her one evening. I stayed in until about 10 p.m. and decided to walk home, despite her pointing out the danger in the city, but I was determined to have a walk and assured her it was safe. That people were all around the streets at that time. Other than the bus station where I saw a few taxis, there wasn't a living soul in front of me or passing cars. No noise except for the river, and I had to pass a bridge. Then, after about 100 m on the left of my street, just a couple of minutes walk to my home. As I walked on the bridge, I saw a black SUV Jeep parked in front of me on the corner of the street. On the street I had to pass. The second I saw it, the lights went off. I couldn't hear the engine at the distance, but I'm certain they shut the engine off so I wouldn't notice them and walk by. But without hesitating, I just turned around and continued to walk back fast. When I started to pass the bus station street with the taxis right in front of me, I slowed down to check, and the SUV was driving parallel to my walking. I watched the black glass until it sped off, and I waited for a bit before sprinting home. Maybe a week later, I was on the phone with my boyfriend walking home, and again it wasn't late as I passed the spot where the SUV was parked previously. I decided to pass my street on the right side because there were houses I could easily approach just in case. As I was passing my street, I heard a car the second I was stepping on the right side, still on the phone with my boyfriend. The car pulled over on the sidewalk. I ran in the front yard of the first house. A man got out of the back door of the car and started approaching me. I was telling my boyfriend what was happening and went closer to the front door of the house. The man started yelling something at me in Albanian dialect and finally got back in the car and they sped off. There were 4 men in the car. Back about a year or so, my sister, mom, and I went on a road trip to New Story 9, Mexico. In Colorado. One night in Colorado, my mom and I were swimming in the pool. She got tired after a bit and went back to the room. An hour or so later, I got out and walked to the elevator to go back to our room. I was wearing a one-piece bathing suit with my towel wrapped around my waist. I had my small backpack, SLP purse, and I wasn't wearing any shoes. Well, the elevator opened and I got in, but I saw an old guy trying to catch it, so I held the doors open for him so he could get in. No big mistake. He walked in, thanked me for holding the door for him, but he didn't press a button for the floor he wanted, and immediately as the doors closed, I looked over at this man and he was staring at my feet. I mean, it was almost comedic how obvious it was. His head was tilted all the way down and his eyes were wide, staring. Then he started complimenting me on my looks while never looking up from my feet. "You're so pretty, you remind me of my wife," and stuff like that throughout the whole ride. Well, the elevator stopped on my floor and the old guy gets out with me. Luckily he was staying on the other end of the hallway. Still, I didn't go to my room. I stopped in front of the janitor's closet and pretended to check my phone and rue through my purse for my room key. After a little while, I heard his door close and shut, so I looked down the hallway and saw that he was gone. As fast as I could, I went over to my actual room door and went inside fast, locking the door behind me. The following morning, I told my mom about it, and she treated it like it was just some friendly old man with no social cues. That may have been the case, but Ted Bundy was also a nice guy. I'd rather be safe and sorry. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I want to give a special mention to Jay Knightum for sourcing and translating some of these stories from Japanese. Check out his channel for more stories you haven't heard before. I'll put the link to his channel in the description. If you have a scary story you would like me to read in an upcoming video, this is one way to help me guarantee variety in the stories I share. You can email me or post it to my subreddit. I'll drop the details in the video description. Thank you all for listening, and a special thanks to my patrons and channel members who now have early access to Adri videos as well as other behind-the-scenes content. Thank you to Melissa, Moore, Dixie, Busby, Michelle, Green, Misty, Rur, Michelle Brooks, Lavina, Cordelia, Kirby, Harris, Angie, Linda, Rebecca, James, Mason, Hayes, Chelsea, Muffet, Lisa, Apprentice, Michelle, and Kevin, Amanda M, Rebecca, Morris, Yennefer, Jessica, Lay, Brock, Ballard, Kim Thompson, Angela Reeves, Sher, AGI, Nathan Shadwick, Nicholas Johnson, Samantha Place, Cheryl Duckworth, Scoutum 405Z, Harris, Unladylike 13, Ventura, California, Elizabeth, Mays, Alexia, Tuttle, Marshana, Rainey, Woe, Sapon, Mary, Rye, Jessica Copperfield, Zoe D, Danielle Shaw, Jane Wiggins, Tara Harris, Mary Rye, Callie Townsend, M, Deshawn Edmondson, Kimmy Lowe, Wendy Maris, Confessions of a Cleaner, Megan Abrams, Miss Ty, Stephen Sloan, Christina Myway, Ashley Brain, Madisa Felter, Danielle, Tina Marie Heckman, Amal Garner, Lisa Ratford, Deborah Malay Connie, Sue T. Adwell, Diana Johnston, Vampy Debs, Jasmine Davis, Erica Ashier, Fox Mulder, Ram Belen, Tina, Nick Bosey, Sarah C.H., Neil Kavanaugh, Tiara Sunders, Timothy Stratton, Jennifer Jenkins, L.Y., Rash Maribel, Deluna, Michael O.M., Ollie, Marissa, Kuro, Amber, Hops King, Slim, Justin, Beast, Gillespie, Joy, Dana, J. Blee, Anna, Stephanie McLaren, Lumine, Kami, Skin Crawler, Adarabella, Plays 2006, Michelle Welchman, Dana B., Lisa McDonald, Clarice Scott, Madison, C. Wasp, Sting, Jennifer J., Ashley Liliat, Lee, Taya, Wyatt, Gina Laura, J.K. 6, Venzio, Donna, Joey Big, GSC, Tanya, Spaghetti, Wyolo King, Matthew, October Gypsy, Lisa, Ollie Thomas, Build With Me, Letitia, Fran Debs, Insomnic Cats, Stephanie Summer, Rebecca Tyra, This Bad Kitty, Your Pay Piece, Dilly Raining, Tripping Balls Through History, Samantha Erica, Alyssa Tracy Kellen, Place, April James, Arbor Jen Joy, Handout, Pegasus Genesis, Karen Kitty V, Barry LJ Fiona Xbox Scott I like booty. Monica Level A Chris Anna Holly Spry. Kimber Jasmine Centix Heather Haven. Kitty Cat Luna 2 ADHD Aurora Janice. Cinderella Baby Borderline Betty Lady Draco Erica Nicole Snowball Rena Melanie. The Honeybee 987 Pretty Girl 215 Ryan Brooke Wendy Crafty K Tina Dina. Vampy Debs Patricia Amber Krista Brenda Absent Alice Chrissy. K Spiders Web H Lala Andrea Sue Monique. Shaw Gorman Emma Lisa Sigma Cube X Greg. Chelsea Amanda Jane Sam Zep Tay Sarah C. Austin Teen Smart Jenny Gabrielle. Fire 5 Sarah P. James Gargano Gemma Allen. Monica Level A and Alex I hope you're doing well guys. I'll see you all on the next one.